So I've been in the FP&A space for 5 years, which isn't like a crazy amount of time, but I've also worked with other vendors in the space. So kind of gonna walk you through how we're different than maybe what's typically out there in the market as well. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. I got a couple slides to show you guys, and then really want to get to the fun stuff with the product. But I always like to start with, how are things done today typically, and then kind of how we come in and differ. So with that, again, I always love to start with current state, right? And where we see finance accounting teams currently struggling today. So again, like Shane mentioned, we're connecting into accounting systems or ERP systems, but we kind of go outside of that, right? So if you're having to do data consolidation for multiple different data sources out there, or maybe it's even multiple ERPs, typically what happens today is, right, finance teams are relying on Excel to do that. So that means they're just dumping data into Excel and manually manipulating it from there. Now, I always like to say, like, when I'm working with a client, like, hey, like, you guys obviously have something that works today. All right, so what's necessarily the issue with getting your reports in a static form? Well, if something changes within that data source, they have to completely restart, right? They have to redump their data and get the latest transaction level detail in there. Or if they have a question about one of the line items in those reports, they have to go back and forth to the system to verify what makes up that specific number, right? So that's typically what we see today if you don't have a system in place. But I'll kind of get into, even if you do have a system in place, what's the value of something like a Datarails? So when we go into that, and this is going to be the slide that I probably talk about the most. And again, I know it's everyone, this isn't necessarily a webinar format. So if you guys have any questions at all about this piece, feel free to ask them. I want to make sure everybody understands it. But when we hop into the data architecture of Datarails, and I show you this slide, really focus on that middle piece that says Finance OS, because that's the engine behind the product. That's what makes this thing so powerful. So when we look at all of that different source data coming in, whether that's a bank, whether that's an ERP, a CRM, what we're doing is we're mapping all of that data into our unified relational data structure, and then providing free reporting outputs on top of that. So those reporting outputs are going to be Excel. That's going to be our web-based piece of the solution as well. That includes dashboarding, workflows, data mapping, and then the PowerPoint integration. So again, when we look at essentially a data structure, that's not something unique in the market, right? That's something that other solutions I've worked with and other solutions I've seen in the market. That's something they do as well, right? There's usually that single source of truth, that central location for someone's data. The difference between Datarails is it's a completely relational structure. That means if you have new data to add in, or let's say you add a new entity, it's very easy to map that data in. So what we typically see is a cube-based structure, which I always say is great until you have to modify your data. So if you're looking for something that's scalable, that can grow really quickly, that really puts the process back in the hands of the finance team, the Finance OS data structure is going to help you accomplish that goal. And that's because, again, any changes you need to make to your overall data set, you're going to be able to do that. You don't necessarily have to rely on us to do that. We teach you how to do it. Any questions before I kind of dive into the next piece on that? Here, I'll go back on that data architecture. I will take the silence as a no. So I will go ahead and move along there. So again, when I start showing you the solution, we start getting into the nuts and bolts of the product. I really want you to think of it more as a platform, right? Datarails is an FP&A platform, or a platform for the office of the CFO. So I'll kind of start with our stepping stone approach, right? So on the far left, we have a solution called Connect. This is simply reporting and analytics. This is allowing you to get your data in Excel and create dashboards and visualizations off that data and the web application. That's really it, right? It's not very complex. It's typically tailored for use cases where maybe you don't have a bunch of different scenarios that you're planning on, or a bunch of different forecast models. You're just like, hey, I need my financial information and it's a pain to get it out of whatever ERP system I'm reporting off of. Great, we have a product for that. Now, when you do start getting into that budgeting, forecasting, maybe data consolidation piece, that's where our flagship product FP&A is gonna be strong. And again, that's gonna allow you to do sophisticated data consolidation, manage different forecast models, budget models, whether it's best case, worst case, bottom up approaches. You're going to be able to seamlessly manage that stuff all within the platform. And then the other modules we have for that is going to be cash and month end close. So these can be standalones as well. Maybe you're just like, hey, really all I need is a 13-week cash flow with real-time bank transactions to do, cash reconciliation. Great. Cash has a direct bank integration that can go get all of that data, connect to multiple banks, and pull that data in real time. Now, again, I mentioned it's a platform. So all of these different features are going to be in the same user interface that you already know once you start using the product. And then that last piece is going to be the month end close, where it's really tailored around account rec. That means workflows around the account reconciliation process. You can make your adjustments right within the platform, upload your supporting items in the platform. And again, it's going to live in that platform or in the same FP&A platform as well, right? Any questions maybe on just the solution suite? And then from here, I can kind of just hop in and show you guys around the solution.
Yeah, Kate, it's Chad. I'm looking down at the bottom where you talk about connectivity and integrations. It looks like the idea there you're probably going to say is it's quite expansive. So maybe I'll ask the question the other way. Are there any limitations of what can't be integrated?
Right now we have over 200 integrations built out. And if it's something we haven't connected to before, we'll typically go and build a profile for it and we'll be able to connect. And the reason for that is because we can connect via API, OData, or ODBC. Now, there are some caveats though, like when you see like ADP on the screen, for example. There's software vendors out there that they charge for their open API or really just any access to their data set, right? And ADP is one of those. So if you want to go connect in to that system directly, you would have to pay, ADP, for example, for that connector to get in that database. That again, still completely possible, but it's just going to, cost more money. And a scenario like that, or if a database is too tricky to connect into to make it like cost effective integration wise, like let's say you're working with someone that has like 40 QuickBooks desktop instances, which I have seen, and that's that can kind of be a pain. What we'll do is we'll say, okay, we're gonna route all of that data via an automatic like data dump or CSV upload, and then route it via like a secure file up to Finance OS. So you can take Excel dumps or emails, like again, that you can set on a cadence on a daily or weekly basis of your data that will upload within the data consolidation piece.
Yep.
So we can take any form of data really.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions before I jump in?
These the connections to it might differ depending on which type of connection, but are these tend to be live connections, or there's some sort of batch? Is there a manual process to sort of pull data over? Is it a combination of all that?
So it really, again, it's not end to end live, right? Because it is migrating into Finance OS. But that cadence can be set however much you want. You can manually refresh. So there's not really typically a limitation where it's like, okay, well, I got to wait an hour for this data to reset. If you trigger an automatic refresh, that data will come in. And I see that as an advantage, again, because of the solutions I've worked with in the past, where it is that end-to-end connection. And now you have, let's say, 5 different users trying to pull data at the same time. Well, what's happening is all those 5 different users are making 5 calls to that data point. Whereas with Finance OS is making 1 call to the data point, and then all of those users are going to use that 1 call, right? If that makes sense. So it tends to increase speed and not really delay it because again, you're just making one call at a data source every time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I will go ahead and kind of just hop in the product and give you guys a quick overview of Datarails and kind of how it works. So I'm going to start us off in the web application. I always like to do that with FP&A because it will kind of all tie in together here. But I'm just on my home screen here, and something I always love to point out about Datarails is this home screen is completely customizable to the user. So, example, I have an executive monthly summary dashboard, the monthly reporting workflow, and a P&L all pinned to my sidebar. Again, it can be customized to whatever reports you typically use or see that you need quick access to. I can also see all the recent data changes that are being made to different forecasts or reports that are coming in as well. So again, like I said, everything you can completely change here. But what I really love to focus on when I start is, if you notice, Datarails is catching something, and that's an unmapped item. So if, something is, let's say, you're using NetSuite or Sage or QuickBooks, whatever, it doesn't really matter what ERP system, and an account gets created, and it's not mapped into the chart of accounts properly, Datarails is going to catch that. And it's going to tell you exactly where it is. It's going to tell you what item was unmapped, and it's going to allow you to go and map that item in properly. So again, if you notice here too, I'm at my chart of accounts segment, and we can manage multiple. And I see, oh, there's an unmapped item within this chart of accounts. Let me go ahead and update that. It's going to bring me right to it. And I can go ahead and, just by selecting the different fields within my current chart of accounts, I can go ahead and map that item in just by utilizing dropdowns. So again, it will catch anything like that that comes into the system. If you need a holistic view of your chart of accounts, it's right here as well. And you can even download that file into Excel and make changes on it in Excel and upload it back into Datarails.
Is there any implementation involved to get to this point, or is it like, how long does it take to make a connection to a QuickBooks file, for example, or a Xero file?
It honestly, it's not very long, right? Because we're pretty much just taking that chart of accounts and mapping everything into Finance OS. So a typical full FP&A implementation takes about 8 to 12 weeks, usually 4 weeks for the reporting piece and then 4 weeks for the planning piece. And obviously that's going to include like us helping build out processes and trying to tailor the solution to the client. But the time to value on the product is pretty amazing because the learning curve is also really low. So, and again, like I mentioned, we're giving that best of both worlds, so you can have that feel of a web-based planning solution, but also be able to utilize Excel with your live data. And I think that's a really important thing, right? Because most of the clients that I've had in the past that are coming from a web-based only solution, what you end up doing with those online models is you end up dumping them to Excel anyways. And again, Datarails is allowing you to start in Excel with those models. Utilize even your existing models if you're, just living in Excel, to where you can just map your formulas in, create live, pull live data in with them, and then you're kind of good to go from there. And you don't have to start your process over, really.
And Cade, you mentioned earlier kind of being more finance led than maybe IT led. Is that correct? So from a security or control standpoint, a lot of the team that's managing this is a finance team, not an IT team.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And you can manage all users and permissions. Like, I can go down to admin and I can see all my members, right? And you can kind of manage them and say what role they should have, or what data they're allowed to see. If they're only allowed to see certain tables, you can set those permissions to make sure that people aren't seeing, information that they shouldn't be. And it's pretty simple to do that. But I think the main thing too, when it comes to, being a finance-led solution, is if you have to go create a dashboard or visualization, if you have to map in data, this is a no-code platform. You're not going to have to rely on IT, or you're not going to have to pay someone consulting, hours to go do that, right? Our goal is to make sure that you're enabled and you can maintain the solution. So the next piece I'll go to is the workflow piece. And again, that's one of my favorite things in the product as well. I mean, just from like any planning solution that I've worked with, right? Like that's a pretty important piece of it, is being able to manage, all of your different processes instead of just, again, sending static Excel spreadsheets around via email. Datarails allows you to put a, defined process around everything. So when we go into, and I'm just using the monthly reporting workflow as an example. I mean, again, this is completely configurable to what your current process is. But when we look at these workflows, again, it's simply just going to start off with the data stats coming in. So we have budget, headcount, SAP, and NetSuite data coming in, and then we have, an assignee and a reviewer set to each file, right? And as an administrator, you can see who's doing what, and if it's completed or not started. Like example, if so-and-so hasn't started this task and they need to get on it, you can ping them again. But again, you have complete visibility into what's going on within your process. And again, managing anything within your chart of accounts, that can be done right within the workflows as well, if that's a step. So that, unmapped item piece that I showed earlier, it's super simple to get to that here as well, because you're just clicking right into the chart of accounts. Any FX conversions, if you're dealing with multiple currencies, can be a step in here, or building in your allocations and elimination models. Really, it could be anything. Again, the main point I want to get across is just the visibility that you're going to have into these processes. But that last piece obviously is going to be the outputs, and that's what's going to take us to Excel. Where did Excel go? Okay, there it is. So when I get into Excel, if you'll notice, just desktop Excel, nothing fancy. But there is this Datarails ribbon that's been added in. And that's what's going to allow us to give Excel all the power. So when we go ahead and look at, all of this functionality and all of these different buttons, really the main thing I want to focus on is these formulas, because that's what's pulling the data into Excel. So when we look at this formula, again, this is not something you necessarily have to learn how to create. I'll show you guys the report builder. It's very simple to create these reports because essentially it's a giant pivot table. But when we look at this formula, all it's really doing is saying, hey, go get the report field, the reporting month, the scenario, and the account group. Go into my system and pull those fields out and put them in the cell. That's really it. And Datarails will go grab that stuff, and now that's live data. Now it's not static, so anything that changes you can drill down or refresh into. But again, these reports and formulas are really easy to modify. So like, again, this is just showing actual. So an example I love to show here is, like, I'm just going to add a column. I'm going to copy and paste this formula over. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the scenario. And when I do that, the data is going to populate in there. And again, that's because all this formula is doing is right here, it's referencing the scenario within the cell. So it pulls that data in. Now, if I have to see, like, again, this is a consolidated view of a P&L. When you talk about building out your specific dimensions or filters that you want to report off of, again, that's something that we can map into the system accordingly and help you build out. So again, if I want to just see the P&L for Boston, I can simply just click on that. Oops, I clicked all again instead of OK. I can just simply click OK. And then it's going to show me that P&L just for that one specific location. Again, you could go by department, entity, whatever you need to filter by. But it's going to show all the relevant data for that location. Now, the next piece, again, when we talk about this is live data. You're not going to really have to go back and forth into your system if you have a question about your data at all, right? All of it's feeding into here. So if I want to see what makes up sales and revenue service, just by the transaction, get to the transaction level detail, I can say, okay, let me go ahead and drill down by detail. And that's going to spit out that transaction level view of all my data and what makes up that number, which is great. But let's say I needed to get a little more granular and I don't necessarily want to just see a bunch of data thrown at me. Well, then I can go drill down, by, let's say, customer, sales or revenue service. Because I want to see all the customer information that makes up that number. What it's going to do there is it's going to spit out a pivot table for me. And now I can see how much each customer makes up of that holistic number. But again, I can continue to pivot off this data just based on the fields within the financials table as I see fit. And again, you can, if there's certain drill downs that you like that you might need to go back to, you can favorite them and then you just click that button and boom, it's going to spit it out for you. Let me stop there. Any questions so far as we move into Excel? Because I know we made a pivot there, so I want to give you guys time to ask any questions.
Cade, I'm just thinking about the controlling the data feed or the data refresh. Is that just sort of assumed that you've got a different control process for, as the books are closed, when they're closed, and so there's no question of whether they're still changing, or through your close, say it's 3 days or 5 days, as those numbers continue to change, these reports could obviously change until you've established that your close period is locked.
From that sense, yeah, and let me know if I'm answering this completely incorrect as well. So, I mean, I feel like that would come back to like the date ranges you set the data at, right? So if it's specifically pulling data from a specific date range, that's all that's going to pop in. It's not going to show any changes, right, within the report, because you're selecting specifically the timeline that you want to report off of. Does that kind of answer your question there?
It does. I may be using March of 2025, these actuals, as the ledger maybe is still changing, this report could also change. And so once you lock your ledger, then you'll know the report will stop changing.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And you can submit, so I'm going to try not to, you can submit drafts as like a final version as well. So when you go back into the web application, when you're closing out and you say, this is our final version for this month, let's say, that's going to reflect in the system as well. And it's not going to pop up. There's no changes are going to be popped up in there, but you are going to be able to see every single version that you've submitted. You're going to be able to see if it's a draft or a final version as well. So if you do need to go back to it, or let's say someone makes a mistake, whatever, you can go back to that version as well. But you can set this stuff in stone, be like, this is my final version. Let me submit this back into the system, and that change will populate.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to see it from the reporting standpoint, but I've seen, systems like this before, but it's all predicated on the fact that the data has stopped moving. But sometimes it's good to see it during the close period, because you sometimes can use these reports to catch things that haven't been posted or haven't posted correctly. It can be a back and forth of submitting the data and then watching the reports refresh. And then if you've caught everything, then you're pretty good to say, yeah, our ledger's done.
Yeah, I was just thinking right along those same lines, Chad, during a month-end close. Like if you're updating reports during a month-end close to see where you're at now, you've got to go in and run new reports, whereas this is just going to give you, all you have to do is refresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, it's going to refresh to the timeline you want it to. And once you click refresh, that data is going to populate in. Again, you don't really have to go back and forth to see if any changes are made. And again, any change you do make within the report, like I said, you're going to have access to every single version. So if you do make a mistake or something didn't populate in right, you're going to be able to just go back and be like, okay, let me get this version out of the way that I screwed up on. Let me re-download this one and make it the latest version again.
I think I saw something about month-end close on one of your earlier slides. Is there some role displays in the month-end close?
You did. Yeah, and I can hop back into the web application and show that as well. That's definitely on my agenda, because that's a newer module and it's been amazing.
Yeah, at your convenience if it's It's coming
But
up.
yeah, so I'll keep going along, and I'll definitely kind of go into month end close again. It's newer, so forgive me for not knowing as much about it as maybe, one of our solutions consultants. But um, a couple other things I do want to show in here is just how do you create these reports, right? And really, what's the value? So when I look at, let's say take these cells, and I keep coming back to these formulas because it's super important. But obviously, what I'm showing you today is a beautiful demo report that we built out to make look pretty, and all that stuff is great. But what if it's your model that we're looking at and saying, well, we built out this pretty complex model with a lot of Excel calculations that I don't think we really want to restart on. That's completely fine, because these cells that are grayed out is the data that's coming into the ERP, or coming in from the ERP system, or whatever data source we're talking about. And then all these cells over here are Excel calculations that we built out. So when I say you don't have to restart your process with Datarails, that means we can take that existing model in Excel and just simply map in these formulas to that report. And whatever data or cells needs to be pulled in directly from the ERP, we can do that, set it as a live report, and then again, all of those Excel calculations are going to run in the background, because all they're doing is referencing, the data that's coming in. So that's where, again, a lot of value is. Now, when we talk about building something like this from scratch, I'm going to open up my report builder that always opens on a new screen, so I have to drag it over. Again, I mentioned it's a giant pivot table. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to select, the financials table in NetSuite. That just happens to be where my demo data lies for the most part. But when we go in, I can see all the different fields within that table. So if I want to pull in, the reporting month as a column, and maybe I want to pull in this specific account group, I can go up here and I can type in, let me see the scenario. I'm going to group that with the reporting month. Again, I'm just pivoting off the fields that it gives me. And if you notice, like, it's giving me a pretty crazy range of data all the way back to 2021. I can just go in here and filter off that. Let's say I just need to see the financial year of 2024. I can go ahead and hit apply. It's showing me forecast data. Maybe I just want budget. Again, it's super simple to come in here and filter off all this stuff. And for some reason, I don't have any data in this table. That's fine. But again, you're really just pivoting off your data, right? And building this report that's going to be, once you click save, it's going to be drillable and refreshable. So if I want to bring, this report together by customer, maybe I don't need that. Whatever it is, you can just drag and drop and see real-time updates as you go. You can even do some of your formatting in here, some design options, make it pretty colors, whatever it is. But the idea is, again, you're going to have the data at your fingertips, and you're not going to have to struggle to get to it. So you don't have to learn how to write SQL. There's no DAX coding involved. It's just, here's your data. You know where to find it. If you, whatever table you want to report off of, wherever your data is sitting, you're just going to be able to, drag and drop those fields into a report. And again, once you do that, it's always there. It's going to save within our system. And then you can continue to go back to it, modify, add on to it. But what we're doing is we're giving you access to your data.
When you distribute something to people that maybe aren't Datarails users, like it would go in Excel, I would guess, is that drillable in some sense?
So if they don't have any access to Excel at all, or to Datarails at all, and they're not even a viewer license, then it's going to be static. So like all of these formulas are going to get pulled out of there. But let's say, they're the department head of, let's use, like, I don't know why I did that, of customer success. And they just need to see what's relevant to them. That's it. They can't see anything else. If it updates, there it goes. So obviously there's not much data in here specifically for that. What I can do there is I can just say, let me export this as values. And that's going to remove all the Datarails formulas out of there. So they can't break anything. It's just a static Excel spreadsheet you're sending to them, or I can export it to them as a PDF. Now, if they're viewers, you can go ahead and share this with them, and they're going to be able to click in and drill down. You know, maybe run some filters on the report, but you know, that's about it. They're not going to be able to actually break any formulas that you have in here or mess with the report. Now a contributor can come in and make changes to maybe their budget, but that's about it as well. Like they're not going to be able to break anything you see in here. But you would have to have a viewer license to drill down.
Okay.
And then the last piece before I kind of jump back into the web application here is when we look at this piece and we say, okay, now we're getting to dashboards and visualizations. Not everybody wants to see their data in Excel, which is fine. And that's why we do offer the dashboarding functionality. But again, something like this, it's like, man, there's a lot of calculations running in the background that's going to kind of be hard to create within a dashboard. So what we can do is we can take whatever view you want and say, okay, let me publish this as a dashboard. And then when we do that, and we come back into the dashboarding functionality within Datarails, I'll go to my P&L. I can see that same P&L summary if it loads right within here. Now, again, you're embedding that this is an Excel model, right? But you can still drill down within the web application as well. So
Gotcha.
if someone doesn't want to live in Excel, they don't even want to touch it, that's fine. You can still see details behind, you know, your information right within the dashboarding tool, right? But again, the main thing here is when we look at dashboards, you know, it's always been something a lot of my clients really like and they love, but it's kind of tricky to manage or create. And that's where we come in to make it less intimidating to do. So when we look at, you know, let's just take this, you know, rolling 12, for example. You know, just once it's created, obviously it's going to work fine. It's going to be great. But if I want to drill into OpEx for November 2024, you know, it's a couple clicks to do that. Super simple. Now, the way we make sure that we can set, like, again, that drill down order or create these visualizations is similar to how we would create a report in Excel. So again, when I go in to edit this dashboard, this is really how you're going to create a new dashboard as well. It's the same thing I just showed you in Excel. You're going to select what table you want to pull data from, and then you're going to start building that out. Now, right here is kind of where we set the drill down order. So we're going to go into see, okay, breakdown by reporting month. Now let's drill down into, you know, the account group, which is going to be filtered at OpEx and cost of goods sold. And then let's see the specific reporting field, see the account name, and then the account ID. So really all you're doing when you're creating these dashboards is dragging in which fields you want to drill down by, and then selecting what type of visualization. So again, we're talking a no-code platform where you can just simply just go grab your data, drag it in, and create these visualizations. And again, that's not exclusive to things that are sitting in the financial table, right? Like I mentioned, you know, we have just, I mean, a ton of different dashboard views that you can create. Really, it's unlimited, but it doesn't matter if it's headcount data, you know, or financial data, payroll, whatever it is. However you want to report off your data, you can do that. Any questions on the dashboarding feature before I kind of jump into some other stuff here? Because I know this is typically a popular one.
Do those dashboards and some of those reports come in like standardized views, and then you can customize them as you see fit?
We have templates for Excel reports typically. I mean, typically it's, you know, that's something we would talk about in the implementation as far as like, hey, these are maybe dashboards that we want to create.
Right.
But again, it's super configurable to where you can just go in and say, once you understand where your data is sitting, like, okay, this is what I need to bring in. This is the type of dashboard I want to see. And you can create it in, you know, a couple minutes. And the good thing too is no matter what, like let's say you implemented a year ago and you're new to the organization, Datarails is always going to have a customer success manager assigned to that account to make sure that you guys have the support that you need no matter what. So, and that's not something that we charge for. That's just a part of the service we offer. It's the same person every time. You're like, hey, I really want to create this dashboard. I'm kind of struggling with it. They'll be like, great, let's hop on a call and we'll figure it out together.
Can you spend just a little bit talking about your pricing structure? Like is it user based, and then also maybe talk a ballpark what an implementation might cost?
Yeah, so pricing is typically going to start around $35,000 annually, and that's like a bundle that we have. So I would call that a foundation package. Really, it's a platform fee that includes 5 users, 2 integrations, and then an implementation is typically around 0.6 of that cost. So it's going to be less than the software cost. We do have like, pre-scoped options where like it's like runs at $15,000. And that's typically what the starting point is for an implementation for Datarails, is around $15,000. Obviously, depending on the complexity of the project, that can go up. But again, we're still going to be under software costs. I don't think there's been very many instances in the history of, or any at all, where Datarails has been more expensive to implement than the actual annual, cost of the tool.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
And can I ask a question? On the
Sure.
implementation, I'm assuming that you would go through with us and help us to get the data that's coming in from the different sources to a common base, right? So when we
Mhm.
pull it in, it's all coming in on an accrual basis, or whatever it is that it needs to be in order to produce the reports that we're producing, whether it be a cash flow or a financial statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's a huge part of one. When we talk about like what does this sales process with Datarails look like, it's going to be, you'd have a call with me where I'm kind of giving you like exactly what we're doing right now, where I'm kind of just giving you like here's a high level overview of the product. Then we go to like maybe a deeper dive with specific, examples that you guys might need to see. And then from there would be that scoping conversation where we'd really determine what we need to do to accomplish this project. Like what do you guys need from us to be able to make Datarails successful? And then even after that, once we scope out the project and say, hey, here are the things that we have to deliver, that kickoff call will be, making sure that we are aligned with your team and trying to understand, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Hey, and then our team telling you, this is the information that we need from you, whether that's multiple chart accounts that you guys got to send over, or whatever it is, could be anything. Just whatever they need from you, they'll let you know and say, hey, this is what we need to make this successful for you guys. But we absolutely work with, you guys every step of the way on that.
And Kate, on any of the reporting or dashboards, is there a lot of work to mobile and desktop, or are they kind of one of the same?
Sorry, Chad, it was a little quiet there
Yeah.
for a second.
Oh, sorry. Just a lot of work. Is there a lot of work in converting the desktop visualization to a mobile version?
No, I mean, we do have a mobile app that's specifically built for dashboarding. So if you want to go in and see all of your dashboards that have been created on the SaaS environment, like, it's going to spit out the same. It shouldn't be any different.
Is that extra work, or does it convert on its own?
No, it just converts on its own.
Okay.
I know we're kind of running short on time here. I did want to highlight that month-end close, Shane, because you had mentioned it before. So I want to kind of get into that, and let's see. Of course, it's going to show me a month that doesn't have data. It always likes to do that. Okay, there we go. April of 2025 has data in it. So again, this is specifically built around the account reconciliation process. And the thing I love about this is those workflows I showed you earlier. These ones are specifically built around account rec. With a preparer and a reviewer, you can mark them as complete. Again, you can completely see everything, all your trial balances that are feeding in within your account rec process. Again, it's just specifically built for that. But another cool part is we can do all of our reconciliations right within the tool. So I know April has data, perfect. So I can see, my AP table gives me my specific, trial balance that's coming in or account line. I can make my adjustments, and then I can upload my supporting items. that, you know, again, if you're preparing this, your reviewer can go in and see, why did they make that adjustment? Oh, let me see that supporting item. Boom. There we go. And everything, again, caches in the system. That way, you know, you have complete visibility. There,
That's a nice feature.
yeah, and again,
That-
go ahead.
does that
I'm
get-
sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Does that get locked down then when it's approved? Like you can't change it after that?
Yeah, I believe once the sign off happens, again, that's something I would have to confirm just because it is newer to me. But I would assume once it's signed off on and everything's approved, it's set.
There's probably a feature to like uncertify it if you had to, because
Yeah.
reconciliations do that. A lot of reconciliation packages I'm thinking of.
I would go ahead and assume that an admin user could probably go and do that if they needed to,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
those are typically the users that have access to do kind of whatever they need to do within the product.
What's the
Okay.
sweet spot size-wise for a company where this product makes sense? Right, in terms of annual sales, or do you see a lot of implementations, for example, at a company that's at a $12 million a year revenue, gross revenue, or is it more geared for $30 million, $50 million size?
Yeah, it's honestly it's kind of tough to say because we have companies of all shapes and sizes using the product. I think it really comes down to what I would say typically $12 million organization, we typically see Connect maybe being a better fit for them just because, you know, maybe the headcount doesn't demand full-blown FP&A solution and it's just really, you know, struggling to get the data. But I think where a lot of the value in Datarails comes from is when you are like planning or forecasting with a bunch of different scenarios that you have to manage, right? And having access to all those different scenarios or versions that you're managing, or maybe there's a bunch of people involved in that process. It's great for that too. So I mean, probably we would say our sweet spots like anywhere from 50 million to, you know, 500 million, right? But we can go smaller than that, we can go bigger than that. It really, you know, really doesn't matter. It just depends on if the need's there.